Dracula's America, Shadows of the West. This is a manual that contains rules for miniature wargaming. As you may imagine from the title, this is a game that is a hybrid between Western fiction and horror. So in this counterfactual history, Dracula has, for some reason, in some way, become the president of the United States, and the United States, we're talking about the 19th century, are plagued by the presence of monsters, necromancers, zombies, also the horrible vampires, of course. But then on the other hand, you also have secret cults and groups of rebels that are getting together to fight against them. So you have horses, guns, cowboys, but you also have spells, monsters, creatures from different types of lore, European lore, such as the vampire, North American lore, such as the Wendigo. Interesting setting. It is a war game at the skirmish level for individual figures. It is pretty much a sandbox game. A lot of flexibility here. There is a lot of things that you can do, and the rules are very simple. And just to give you a sense of what the game looks like, simply to give a sense also just of the illustrations, which are always beautiful when we're talking about Osprey. This is a book by Osprey. So just you see some of the art, and Osprey, as they do, they alternate, especially in their rule books, pictures of possible gameplay with their usual outstanding art. It's hardcover, it's very nice production value, it's a nice volume, but of course we are buying it not just to look at it as a volume, but if we buy it, it is because we want to play the game. As I said, this is a miniature game, and it is a little bit of a sandbox game. You choose the scenario you want to play, you choose the campaign, whether you want to play it as a campaign or not, you choose the objectives for the scenarios, and then you provide the physical components. You will create a posse. Here, for example, I have set up a scenario that I just created in which we have a necromancer, or say a monster maker, this evil guy here, which is leading an army of monsters. Giant spider, evil trends, they're not all trends are as cute as the ones in Tolkien, giant worm, and also we got a witch coming from there. And these monsters are attacking a fort that is being defended by a group of humans. Now, as for the game components, I'm using a paper terrain here for the player mat. I'm using, again, as you can see, paper miniatures. These are by, what's the company? Aris. Basically bought the template for the monsters on Wargame Vault, and then I added these plastic bases. And I like that because this way I can have huge variety of different types of armies and things without having to build or paint anything. I just plug in, I just stick in the paper, print it, cut it, stick it in the plastic base, and I'm done. As for the humans, however, yes, I'm using plastic bases, but I'm repurposing tokens from another game. And here you have a little bit of trivia, because I'm not telling you which one it is. Let's see if some of you are able to figure out what is the game. No Googling, otherwise that's like cheating. In any case, here we have the humans that are gonna defend against the monsters. Now, each player will need to use a standard deck of cards. Both players shuffle them. Then each player draws a hand of cards equal to half the number of models that they have in play. For example, the humans have 6, so the human player draws 3 cards. And the opponent does the same with their cards. Now, each player then selects a card from their hand secretly. They put them face down, and they reveal them at the same time. This indicates the order in which the players will activate. The highest numbers activate first, so you go from highest to lowest, and when there is the same number, black activates before red. So this player now gets to activate, and it is the monster player. Now the monster player can get to either activate a single model and perform 2 actions with that model, such as, say, move and move, or move and attack. Maybe this character has like a spell, or although he has magic powers, also has a gun of some sorts. To move, attack, etc. So either you activate a single model for 2 actions, or with an activation, you activate 2 models only for 1 action each. The spider moves, and this one attacks with a range attack. It is that simple. And of course, you need a tape measure to regulate that. There are simple rules to regulate different types of movements, such as movement in difficult terrain, movement through cover, climbing, jumping, falling, that sort of stuff. All very easy. The basic idea is that you can use an action to move. But I really like the engine of the card system, and the choice between activating everybody for an action each, or fewer than all of your models, but with 2 actions for each model that you activate. Now, of course, we want to know about fighting. Fighting is based on a characteristic, on a trait that your characters will have. Interesting enough, each character has only 1 main trait. Pretty much each character is described by a main trait and then the weapon or weapons that the character is carried. You may also have special skills and abilities, but once you have that trait, which is great, and the weapon, you're good to go. You can play with that character. Grit. Grit is this generic ability of being able to do stuff. It is used for attacking. It is used for different types of combat, different types of situations. And the characters have 3 levels of ability. You have the heroes, or the best ones, then the veterans, and then the recruits, or I don't remember what the name of the lowest rank is. Point is, there are 3 ranks of quality, and the highest rank, the character at the highest rank will roll a d10 when taking tests. Intermediate rank D8 and lowest rank D6. I know this is a 12-sided die, but it only has numbers from 1 to 6. It is a double 6, and that's what all the cool kids are rolling these days when they need to roll a D6. So D6, D8, and D10. D6 being the worst, D10 being the best. Why is that so? Because every test that you take is exactly the same. A standard test, which includes tests for combat, a standard test is a test in which you roll 3 dice, and if there are modifiers, the modifiers modify the number of dice. So I have +1, it doesn't mean I add +1 to the numbers that I roll, it means I need an extra die. Oh my gosh, I have a -1, so now I only roll 2. So when you take a test, you use the base number of 3 modified based on modifiers, roll the actual dice. Each number that you roll, which is 5 or higher, is a success. Each number which is 4 or lower is a fail. And that tells you why, of course, rolling a d10 and trying to get 5 or higher, it gives you more chance of success than doing the same with a d6. Very simple, very smart mechanism. Then you also have the occasional game effect that will give you an extra rank, so you can roll the die with more sides, or vice versa, penalty that that worsens the kind of die that you're using. So this is the tender test, which you also use, among other things, to fight. When you are attacking, you take a grit test after taking into account modifiers, because you're firing, and so maybe the opponent is in cover, or maybe the opponent is showing you the bag. Then you have an advantage when you're shooting somebody in the bag. Not very honorable, but effective. Range. Each weapon will have different levels of range, and depending on the level that you're using, you may have a penalty or an advantage. At the end, after you roll, you will have hopefully a number of hits. Now the number, then after if you have hits at all, the target will have to take a save test. A save test is this time a single die roll. You don't roll multiple dice. It's a single die roll, and you're trying to roll equal to or higher than the save number. The save number depends on the number of hits. So basically, if you hit 3 times, it doesn't mean that there will be 3 save rolls. It means that save rolls will be harder to pass than if you hit the target only once. So number of hits determines the save. The opponent rolls. If the opponent rolls equal to or higher than, good, they manage to dodge at the same time. If they roll less than the save number, they actually take damage. you always need to roll the save number, even if the target number is so high that it is impossible, because the number that is rolled in the save number, in the save roll, is then used to determine number of damages. Basically, you subtract the save roll number from the number of hits that you had, or from the target number. So the target number was 6 and I rolled a 2. The difference is 4. That is then used to determine the level of damage. Because if the difference between the target number and the save roll is 1 or 2, then your character is shaken, and that the target is shaken, and that degrades the die that you roll, say from 8 to 6, so a minimum of 6. If the difference between the target number and the save roll is 3 or 4, the character is downed, and now the character can only roll by 2 until the character manages to get up again. And if the difference is 5 or more, hallelujah, sorry, the character leaves for greener pastures. So this is the general idea, really. And if you have melee, it's a similar idea. Oh my goodness, the spider made it there, up there. Now it's gonna be a fight between the two. Is again a similar idea. Is an opposite test. The difference, like it happens in so many games that have melee, is that now both sides, both people involved, or both creatures involved in the melee are gonna roll and try to inflict damage on each other. But this is the general idea. The actual flow of the game is this one: draw cards, play a card secretly, so you determine who goes first in each round, determine if you're gonna activate a character for 2 actions or 2 characters for 1. Resolve activations, resolve combat. Continue like this until one of the 2 players, or one of the 2 sides, has managed to achieve the scenario, the victory conditions for the scenario. There are many different scenarios, so there are many different ways in which the game may end. So, like so many other word games that I played in the past by Osprey, this is a solid one. This is a publisher that definitely must have a strict selection process and must be very good at developing, because these games, although they're very simple in general, most word games that I played that were published by Osprey were very linear, very intuitive, yet they really are solid. They really hold together well. They have a lot of theme, a lot of flavor. They let the theme shine through the mechanics. And Dracula's America Shadows of the West is no exception. I like the theme in general. I like Western fiction and I like horror. The two together are great. Of course, there's another game that came out a couple of years ago and that has been a big success since, which is Shadows of Brimstone, which has a similar idea, but that one is more Lovecraftian horror. This is more traditional gothic, vampires and monsters of that ilk, which is perfectly fine. So we have 2 different experiences, 2 different types of flavor. Mechanically, also the game is completely different from Shadows of Brimstone. Now, as for the components, you will need to provide them. I don't know that there is a dedicated line of miniatures for this, but yeah, you can repurpose miniatures from horror games, and I'm sure that there are miniatures out there for cowboys and Native Americans and all sorts of like other people that you may expect to be in 19th century America. I'm not a miniature builder in the sense I don't build them, I don't paint them, I don't base them, and so I use paper miniatures, as you saw. To me, that's pretty easy. Anything that I want, I can find a template online, print it, and I can make any army that I want. I guess that for those of you that are into the hobby of preparing, assembling, and painting miniatures, maybe you have to go an extra step to find the materials. As for gameplay, it is absolutely outstanding. It is really fun. It works so well. It is so simple. The deck of cards, in a certain sense, already brings you there, brings you into the theme, because we had this association with poker cards and the Old West. The card play is very simple, is very basic, but again, you do have some tough decisions there. It is a little bit of an abstract mechanic. I don't know exactly why. Maybe it's confusion in the battlefield, but why you wouldn't be able to activate whoever you want. Usually when there is this random activation through cards, I prefer it at a different scale. That's so like armies or larger groups of people, so that represent, say, problems in the chain of command. Here, not so much. I don't know what that represents thematically, but it works, even though it may not represent anything specifically. You have that tough choice of deciding which cards to use and when, and trying to read the opponent. And interesting enough, you can also play the game solitaire. Then you simply select your own card, and then you draw a random card for the AI, for the other side, and you see what happens there. The game is very solitaire friendly that way. And then if you want, you can determine randomly if the AI is going to activate a character or two, and then you roll randomly to determine which one activates, or maybe the one that has the best chances of activating. You can easily write your own AI. But I like the card play, and I like the simplicity of having one target number that works across the game, with the exception of the save roll that depends on how many hits you had. But there is a general target number which is always the same, and of course manipulating dice. And what else I like? Well, I like the bucket of dice. This is something just fun. There's something visceral about dumping that bucket of dice on the table. It's sort of like old school, this idea that you modify the number of dice. Reminds me of the role-playing games of the 90s that tended to have that, rather than like role-playing games have done before, the idea of the target number, the armor class of the opponent. And it's just fun. Again, it's visceral, it's fun, it's physical. And it really contributes to the action. Something else that I've seen in other recent war games, the idea that you don't have health points, hit points, so you don't have to keep track of that. You want to have the token that says 5 hit points, and the target takes 2 hit points, then you replace it. You don't have the board cluttered, the player cluttered with tokens. Pretty much you have done tokens, which is activation tokens, actually activated tokens, just to mark which characters have acted already. And that's pretty much all you need, really. But the fact that you still have different states, you may also want maybe shaken tokens just to mark that. But the fact that there aren't many tokens on the board, each character is in one of 4 states. Okay, shaken, downed, well, I guess dead, so that's maybe not exactly a game state, but the fact that you can keep track of that very easily. For the down characters, you simply move down the unit. For the shaking, maybe use a token. But it still makes sense. You still have an interesting sequence of actions. You do not have to crunch numbers too much. You do not have to do much math. Again, these are very linear, very straightforward mechanics that let you look at the story, see at the narrative progression that emerges from the actions that the characters take in the play area. And that is really what is fun. This is a game which is all about the theme, while still relying on a very solid and efficient game engine. So Dracula's America Shadows of the West, really good set of miniature rules. If you are into miniature wargaming, take a look at it, because this is really good stuff.